Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 14th episode of EDspresso Café. It is lovely to have you tuning in with myself and Dr. Rika Kruin, where we are going to be chatting a little bit about this experience of Dejabrew, or that feeling of having taught the same thing again and again, and how we can possibly think about things differently and reimagine things. So, Rika, you've been teaching for a little bit of a long time. have you had that experience of deja vu?
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. And I'm not ashamed to say that I think I've been teaching for about 37 years. And teaching the same kind of topics year after year, and especially in a subject like history, it really begins to feel like history.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think one of the wonderful things that's happened when you come across my path and we've been working together and looking at how we can reimagine things is really this different way of thinking about teaching and learning. If you haven't already seen if you're watching and you haven't already seen our stories collection, you'll be able to find Rika's beautiful face on our website, on our stories page, where everything that she's going to be sharing with us and chatting us through is on the website and beautifully showcasing the way that she's rethought and redone a little bit of your history curriculum, and in particular the section on heritage. So, do you want to tell me maybe how it is that you used to teach the history section it's grade 10, right?
Yep.
In the grade 10 curriculum. Do you want to give us a little bit of a kind of a background of the history of that, of how you teach that section?
Yeah, Lindsay, to start off with, I've always regarded myself as a so-called master teacher because I've got these many years of experience. And so I believe that, I know how to do this thing. And then lately, actually also, when I did write up my PhD, I wrote it up specifically about future thinking, teaching, how things should be done differently. And I became very aware of the fact that we cannot simply keep on doing things the way that we were, we've been doing it since forever. And this year in particular was maybe the ideal year for me to try something differently, because I only teach the grade 10s this year. And I believe it gives you some flexibility to play around a little bit, because it's not grade 12 results. So the one particular, you don't have to train them for an exam. So the one particular thing is that we have to do a research in term 2 on heritage. And when I saw your marketing thing that said, if you read the same thing over and over, it's actually a recipe. I'm like, I know that feeling. You get it, and you actually can guess, which textbooks or which resource they all use, because you read the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, the project. Yeah, exactly. The project that is a recipe, actually.
Yes, it is. So how I used to teach it, I would provide them with a particular list of heritage sites in our country, and I'm like, okay, pick one. And this is what you need to do, because you have to develop research skills. In a nutshell. So when it came across my path again this year, I decided that I wanted to try it, the Purple ZA way. And I just want to encourage people out there that are maybe born in the same decade than what I was, is, it was such a learning curve for myself and for my learners. I am fortunate that I am at a school that we can make use of technology, but I think the basic principles I use can also be used even without technology. And I think that's important. That's important to say.
I'm just seeing we've got a whole bunch of viewers that have just come online. So I just want to pop up the link to our stories page again. If you scroll down on Pebbles Today's stories and have a look for Rika's face, you'll see the particular lesson that we're chatting about, looking at the project, the research project around heritage. So, so you used to teach it, kind of very methodological, in a very specific way, methodically, that's the word I was looking for, and kind of then you end up with a whole bunch of the same projects, and then you want to, bury your head in your hands marking. So other than the fact that you were tired of that feeling, was there anything in particular that made you want to change your approach? Like, why did you even bother putting the time in to rethink it?
Well, firstly, it ended up being a lot of fun. I must say, it was more fun than what and than what I think my old style was. That's the one thing. And then the other thing is, I know people are tired of hearing it, but I did realize that we have to prepare our learners better. At problem solving, working collaboratively. All of those 24th century, the 4 C's, and all those things that we keep on hearing about, and they are important. And I saw it for myself, even when I looked at the comments that my learners made about that it was more fun than simply sitting in class and listening. That some of them said they fed off each other's creativity, that it was much more creative than what they used to. Of course, you had the learners that said they didn't enjoy it because they don't like doing group work. They want to get their own recipe, get it done and hand it in. And there's the mark. But I believe, it's a process, and but we had so much fun. And yes, the reason why I wanted to do this is also not to develop just research skills, but to also develop their digital literacy, and like I said, to work collaboratively and be more creative and have more fun.
Amazing. And I think even if it's just that one motivation, it's totally worth rethinking things. We've done a lot of rethinking lately in our extreme makeover series with our webinars, where we're looking at making over lessons and presentations and those kind of things. And I think it is just such a refreshing thing to have the courage to kind of give it a makeover. So do you want to chat us through, obviously we can have a look at the details on the website, but do you want to chat us through kind of the learning journey briefly? How did you engage them? What was the process? And then maybe we can kind of delve a little bit deeper into some of the lessons that you learned and the challenges and joys that you experienced.
Yes, I think what I decided to do was to divide it in 3 phases. But I'm also quite a believer in working smarter, not harder. So I considered the assessment of this as well, so that I didn't end up having to work harder. So in the first phase, it was more like introducing, because they have to have an understanding of heritage. So in the first phase, I drew on what we did in term 1. People familiar with the syllabus knows that we do ancient civilizations. So I'm like, okay, let's look at what have you learned, and how do you now have an understanding, and let's make sure you have an understanding of what we understand by heritage. And in groups, they got a particular, like say the Ming or the Shanghai, and they ended up doing in Book Creator, which is a wonderful, wonderful platform to work on. They had to come up with a newspaper or a magazine, on those, and that on those civilizations, and that they had to peer assess, and score. And I had a wonderful rubric that they could use, so that was not my marking. I did make it count percentage-wise, not a big percentage of the total mark, but they did the peer assessment. And then the bulk of the middle part of this process was phase 2, and that was where the real problem solving came in, because the driving question behind this was that the team was recruited to put an advocacy plan together for a particular heritage site that is endangered to be demolished, and you have to present a plan to the Minister of Tourism or whatever of why it shouldn't be, and that was it. That was the brief, and that was lovely because they could use any platform they wanted, and I made sure that I really scaffolded it for them well, and they had to make sure about who's going to take on what role, so that they could have particular jobs to do. And
I love that. I just want to interrupt you there for a second, because I think choice is actually such a magnificent motivator when it comes to learning. I mean, we give teachers a choice of courses on our platform, and I think that when teachers are engaged in choice, or students are given a choice, it suddenly feels like less of this, job, work, project, thing, and more of a, they take more ownership of it, and they have more agency, and they have more freedom. And I think often we give our students kind of a choice of topic. That's a kind of common thing that we give. But I think giving them a choice of, of output, of process, giving them choices within the process, it really does just make that learning so much more personalized for them. So well done on including that, because I think sometimes we think, oh, we don't have time, but actually it is a really powerful motivator of learning. So fantastic. Okay, so they got their choices, and they were working on their sites. I also love the advocacy, the real audience, that it actually matters to them, their students. It's something that's relevant. It's not just this random tourism site in another part of the country that they've, that it's been personalized for them. And then?
Well, I must quickly tell you about a particular, now that you say of having a choice, because one particular learner in my class, she has said to me, ma'am, I'm sorry, I just don't like school. There's nothing you can do to make it better for me. I just don't like school. And I was absolutely amazed about how she just took this on, and she ended up being the web designer for the teams. They ended up developing a whole web page, and she was the one that drove that. So that was wonderful. So ultimately they could, as I said, they could use any platform. Funny enough, a lot of Instagram pages, that's their language at this stage. I had to join Instagram to be able to market. So
well done.
I'm almost 60. I rest my case. So, and then it was presented to an authentic audience. And apart from myself, I believe one of the strongest people in this audience was someone that has a postgrad diploma in museum and heritage studies, and she was part of this audience, the panel that we had to present it to. And then I had someone on the panel that looked at the multimedia used in the teaching of history, and an expert a little bit on the use of technology. So that also helped my marking process for me, because we had a scoring rubric, but we scored it individually, and it also, I could it gave me an indication, because sometimes maybe I'm a little bit biased towards, because your learners, so to have this authentic audience, it was very interesting to see how they scored it, and I worked out an average for that phase of their project.
And as you've said, I think sometimes and I saw this when I did PBL with my own students, because it is a different style of engagement, because it's a different way of learning, what tends to happen is that we tend to actually reach different students differently. And because of that, actually, a lot of the times the academic achievement is higher than it would be, using traditional approaches or within a traditional model. And I love that, bringing in an authentic audience that is also giving you feedback and looking with fresh eyes at the product and those kinds of things, almost like a little bit of blind moderation. I think that's also a really great thing for us as teachers, because we get so used to, we know the student, they're a 60%er, but actually, us redesigning learning and reconceptualizing ourselves as teachers also creates space for our students to do that. So I love that about project-based learning, and I'm so glad you got to see some of that too, and the ones that aren't generally engaged, come alive and be engaged.
It was amazing.
But can you tell us about some of the struggles? So what were some of the challenges that you encountered, the things that weren't so easy? And perhaps if you learned things in this process that you want to share with everyone watching for next time, then that'll help us all move forward in a more constructive way, right?
Yeah, if I can start with myself, Lindsay, when I wrote up my story, I actually said there that it was a huge learning curve for myself, but also for my students. And, but it was such a fun journey because I couldn't always maybe handle the technology and they would help me, so, and it was fine because girls, I'm not sure how to do this. And they're like, man, just push that button, that arrow, and it's okay. So I think if I had to look back, I believe that there were times that I thought I bit off maybe a bit too much for a first try. But it was when you're in that moment, it's new. And but I believe that I will never go back doing it the old way. But people out there that may want to try this, I want to say rather do something small than nothing, than try to compete with other people and try and have this perfect revamped research, and but yes, it was a huge learning curve for me, but like I said, also for my learners. And but what a wonderful experience. But if I was to give a tip, I had a third phase, which was the real research essay then. Maybe a small, a little bit less than what I tried for my first try.
Okay, Lisa's watching, and she's noting the argumentative essay that everyone submitted, and she's asking if we ask all the students for an app, but who uses the app and how the app answers their question, is that still enough choice? So obviously you said to everyone they had choices in various stages, and then it's a case of, right, everyone needs to submit an essay. So there is obviously part of it that's a requirement according to the curriculum. So I know Lisa actually teaches accounting and business studies and economics. And so I guess she's saying, if she's asking students to create an app, if that's a product, but you're still saying you've got choice in who uses the app and how the app answers their question, do you feel like that is giving students enough choice? What advice would you give to Lisa off the back of your PBL experience?
Hi, Lisa. Yeah, it's I think it's also a question of, I'm not sure what you mean by using an app. Do you mean?
So I think part of the PBL was that the students were creating an app. There we go. So they had to choose, yeah. And actually, Lisa's making a good point. So she says in her PBL, the students were allowed to choose their final product, but most of them do PowerPoint. So how do we kind of, balance that choice, but still pushing our students out of their comfort zone to create digital products? How do you think we can think about scaffolding that learning?
Okay, you know what? I think maybe for none of my students actually ended up doing a PowerPoint. I think maybe because I told them I don't want you to do a PowerPoint because
so agreeing, like, let's just take PowerPoint off the table. Everybody knows.
I took PowerPoint off the table. Yeah, and so what I did say to them, think of what we've used before, what you used in your first phase, the book creator, and then actually I went round to the groups and I said to them, what do you think you're going to do? So there should be a lot of engagement in the class as well, and then then they would say we're sort of doing this, and then I would perhaps guide them saying, but instead of a PowerPoint, why can't you translate it into using a different app? So I'm not sure if I've answered.
Generally agreeing that PowerPoints and posters are banned. I think if I could just add a little tip from my experience as well, is to almost create a choice board that gives them choices of different products. I've actually got one. I'll pop it in the comments of the video once we post it live, to give the students a choice of product. And actually, sometimes I find it's helpful to link to examples. So say, you could create a Google site for your place. Here's an example. Or create a poem, a slam poetry or what have you. Here's an example. And even if the examples, in fact, I deliberately generally choose examples that are not related to the topic, So they don't kind of mirror and copy, but at least they've got an idea of some inspiration of how I can present an idea. Is it a video clip? Is it a podcast? Is it all of those different options? I think that's a really great way to design learning when you want there to be choice. And also, I think too much choice is overwhelming. So that's what I think you did really beautifully is, gave the choice on in the early stages of the product where there's exploration, and then kind of narrowed it down and focused it at the end. I think often we feel like that final product has to be the big, the big wow thing. Whereas actually sometimes once you've engaged in a really constructive learning journey, to write a great essay is a real test of can you, actually apply learning. So,
Lindsay, to be quite honest, I believe also then we should also move away from using PowerPoints. I've tried to move away from using just PowerPoints in my class as well, because there's more that we can use. But in terms of their feedback as well, is that they ended up saying that they enjoyed the journey. It was more fun, and yes, many of them said that they had to think differently than what they did before, and that they had to learn to work together in a group. And like I said, there were negative comments as well, because you won't have all of them on board. But overall, it was really a very fun thing. And I think one of the things that they mentioned that they enjoyed most was the problem solving. There was a lot of problem solving, even if it was just solving the technical aspect of something. Because they would tell me, but this and this, and I'm like, I don't know. Figure it out. What do you think?
I have an American friend, Patrick Green. He says, he talks about the shrug. It's like the teacher's most powerful weapon. You just did it. I don't know. Amazing learning journey, and thank you so much for taking the time to share that with us. Of course, if you're watching and you're feeling a little overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, we do have a whole lot of courses. One of them is the PBL Pro, which kind of helps you scaffold and design your own PBL units. But I think really I'd love for you to share with us now. You said in the beginning that you used to consider yourself a master teacher, and that this journey has taught you some other things. What would you say are, let's go with the 3 characteristics that you think a real master teacher, in terms of what our students in our classes today need most from us? What would a real master teacher look like or be like?
I would think someone with courage, because it takes courage to be willing to change and to take on new things. And not, we can fail in front of our kids, it's fine, because that's also a lesson they can learn. And then I do believe so much, I know it's a buzzword, lifelong learning. We must be able to continuously learn and learn and learn. And I think the third one may not be so much with teaching as such, the pedagogy, caring. We have to be caring teachers. That for me is very important.
Absolutely. And I think having empathy with our students when we see them struggling and them learning and learning alongside them is a really, really beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Rika, for taking the time to share your story and for this chat. And thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. We hope to see you on one of our webinars or in one of our workshops, in person or online soon. We've got lots and lots of learning, and we're a little bit addicted to learning at Pebble. So if you want to be surrounded by inspiring teachers like Rika and have the courage and the vulnerability to rethink your teaching and learning with kindness and compassion and empathy, then we'd love to support you in that. So until next time, I think I want to say that one of my key takeaways from what Rika's shared is that you need to keep experimenting. It's almost like that attitude of experimentation. And you, Rika, what do you think?
Keep on looking for the joy in teaching. Because, absolutely. Because that's why we started this in the first place.
Right. So keep experimenting, keep looking for the joy. Until next time, we'll see you then.